Hi guys, today we're going to start looking at graphing systems of linear inequalities, and I'm going to call this part 1 because we're going to spend several videos working on this before we get to exam time. So when we talk about graphing systems, it's because instead of getting one inequality, you get two. So you're basically going to graph them and see where they overlap. And the overlapping area is the part they share in common is the solution area. So I'm going to do a couple of them today, a couple of them in the next video so you can at least get some experience at these. So I'm going to start with this first one down here. You'll notice I'm using one of the graphic organizers. So I'm going to start with this. And remember, don't hesitate to hit pause if that's something that you need to do to make sure that you have time to get everything written down the way that you want to. So this first one says graph and solve y is less than or greater than negative 2x minus 1 and y is less than or equal to 2x plus 3. So really probably the easiest thing to do with this is to take the two of them and split them. So I'm going to do this one. And then I'm going to go over here and do the other one. Doesn't really matter how you split them up, just to make it easier for yourself. Because you do have to find the same four components that you've had to on the other ones. Slope, y-intercept, the line type, and the kind of shading. So with this one, let's start with identifying our slope and our y-intercept. So my slope or my m value is negative 2. So I'm going to make it a fraction and do negative 2 over 1. So I have a rise over run. My y-intercept or my b value is negative 1. Now that's just from identification here if it's in that slope-intercept or that y equals form. Now let's start talking about the line, because that's based on the inequality that's here. So if I have that inequality, it means I'm going to have a dashed line. And if I have that inequality, then I'm going to shade above. So you're still basically finding those four components. You just have to do it twice for both lines. Okay, I'm just going to draw a line down here just to make it easier for myself. But on this one, here's my slope and here's my y-intercept. So my slope is going to be 2 over 1. My b value is positive 3 for my y-intercept. If I have that kind of inequality, means I have a filled in line. And if I have that kind of inequality, I'm going to shade below. So really when you're doing this, if you can almost kind of take the area that you have and find two separate areas to write in for each one of these, that will be the easiest thing to help yourself. Okay, now here's what's a little challenging. Now we need to go through and graph both of these on the same graph. Now I will tell you the one thing that is the most helpful is if when you choose to graph, you graph with two different colors when you shade it. So I always tell kids to choose two colors like yellow and blue that make green so it's easy to see the overlap. Or choose red and blue because it'll make purple. I don't care. Make it so you can tell. If you have crayons at home, you can do crayons or colored pencils. If you could only do shading, then you might want to do shading where you shade one way, like going straight across, and then maybe the other one is straight up and down. You're going to have to do something so you can see where the overlap happens. So I'm going to start with this first one, and I start with the y-intercept. So the y-intercept is negative 1. My slope is negative 2 over 1, so I go down 2 and over 1. And then I'm going to go backwards and do the same thing. So now I have this made. I'm going to do a dashed line. If I can manage to do that without making too much of a mess here. Now, if I'm going to shade, I'm going to choose, let's see, I'll just choose pink so it's easier. So I'll do this whole thing with pink. So I'm going to shade above, which means I'm going to shade on this side. Now again, super important, don't get too close to the line. You won't be able to tell if it's dashed or filled in by the time you get done. Okay, now I'm going to go to the other line, and this one is also going to get graphed on here. So I start, I'm just going to choose a different color here. Okay. I'm going to start with this blue one, or excuse me, this B value that I just marked with the blue mark by. So I have a +3. It's my y-intercept. My slope is 2 over 1, so it's up 2 and over 1. Now this happens to be a filled in line. So I'm going to draw a line through this. It's completely filled in. I'm going to choose a blue color here just so I can do that overlap a little bit. So I know that I have to shade below the blue line that I just made. So just like we did on the other ones, close to the line, let's try not to hit it. Do I know you're going to color over the other line? Yes. But try to make the lines at least as best you can. Not too crazy. Now, you can tell by looking at this, there's just blue here and just my pink here, but do you see where there's both colors? That's where your solution is. So any point that would be in that area, so if I went over 3 and up 3, that point would be in there. That would be a solution because it's in the overlapping area. Okay, let's try one more for today. Take this, I'm going to flip this over here. Now on this one, I have graph and solve. Y is less than or equal to -2x plus 3. And y is greater than -1/3 x minus 2. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to separate these two into kind of 2 piles. Just so that when I go to get my 4 pieces, they won't be like on top of each other. So remember, I'm going to start out doing my 4 pieces here. So there is my y-intercept and there is my slope. So my m value is -2, so I'm going to put it over 1 to get my rise over run. My b value is +3. Now, if I have that kind of inequality, that means it's going to be a filled in line. And if that's my inequality, then I'm going to shade below. Okay, so I have my piece here. Okay, now I'm going to go through and I'm going to do the same thing for this other line. So there's my slope and there's my y-intercept. So my slope is going to be -1 over 3. I always say if I have a negative number, it should always go with this top number because it'll help direct what's going on. My b value is -2, which comes from right there. Now the next pieces are about the line and the shading. So if I have this inequality, that means that I'm going to have a dashed line. Hang on, my Thing is not letting me write there. There we go. So dash line, and it's going to be shaded above. So remember, you need all 4 of those pieces for both of these in order to be able to graph. Okay, now go through to graph. I'm going to start with my first one, so +3. Now my slope is -2, so it's going to be down 2 over 1. And then remember, you have more points that are up here. So I'm going to go up 2 and back 1. Now we said this line is going to be filled in. So I'm going to make a straight line here. And I'm going to take this one to shade. So I'm going to shade below. Now, I don't know if you've noticed, but every time I've used a highlighter, have you noticed I've gone back and marked the inequality with it so I know which one is which? Kind of color codes it. So that means I know this one goes with this. So using something like that would be super helpful for you, I think. Okay, now I'm going to go to the second one. I start with my B value, so -2. My slope is -1 over 3, so I go down 1 and over 3. Now we said this is going to be a dash line. Sorry, making a dash line is harder on the iPad than it appears to be. There we go. Maybe that's better. Okay, now on this one, I need to shade above. So I'm going to shade above kind of that red line I made. So it's going to be up here. And I'm going to go through and mark this one. So again, I know this one goes with this blue area. You'll notice this is just pink and this is just blue, but you can see they overlap here. So this overlapping area is going to be your solution. Okay, we're going to keep working on this the next time together.